So 水煮肉片 literally translates to poached sliced meat. So I'm going to start by thinly slicing some pork, but you can use any type of meat. There are varieties with white fish, there are varieties with beef, all the same recipe, just different meat. So if you can't eat pork, then just sub out the meat with whatever you can eat. Let's throw that meat into a bowl and create a marinade. We're going to use a half a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of yaozhou, aka shaoxing wine, a tablespoon of soy sauce, half a teaspoon of MSG, and an egg white. And you can use that yolk for something else, I guess. Let's let that marinate for 30 minutes. And in the meantime, let's prepare some toppings. I'm going to cut the whites off of some scallions into maybe 4 centimeter segments and hold those off to the side. And then I'll slice up the greens. I've got some cilantro, which is not required, but it really adds a nice accent flavor if you're into that kind of thing. Into a hot wok, I'm going to throw some Sichuan peppercorns and some dried chilies. And just toast them briefly to get those oils flowing. Now, the traditional recipe calls for a mortar and pestle to grind this, but I have the crappiest mortar and pestle in the world. So I'm going to don my mask, indoors this time, and dump that all into a spice mill, aka my terrible coffee grinder. Hopefully my coffee doesn't taste spicy after this. It may take a few pulses to get everything totally broken down, but we're looking for a fine powder that we can sprinkle on top of our soup. Next up, we're going to make a chili oil. Now, this recipe comes from Steph and Chris at Chinese Cooking Demystified, so be sure to check out their full recipe video. But basically, we're going to heat up some oil and infuse it with a few different spices. You got cardamom, cloves, star anise, really anything you want to put in there. That'll add another layer of complexity beyond the chilies. Then we're going to de-seed and powder a bunch of dried chilies. And then we're going to pour the oil over the chili powder in 3 different stages. And there's some sort of traditional explanation for this, but just follow the rules and everything will be all right. And you can see already that this oil is turning a bright red. So we're going to throw that into a coffee filter to strain it out while we get on with the main dish. Go ahead and throw some oil into the bottom of a wok over medium-high heat. Then I'm going to throw in about 3 centimeters worth of minced ginger. I find that smashing it with the side of my cleaver really helps the process along. Next, I'm going to mince up about 5 cloves of garlic. And throw those on in with the ginger. Now when you're cooking in a wok, everything moves very quickly. So just be attentive, and if things get a little too hot, you can pull it off to the side where it's cooler. That's kind of what those angled sides are good for. We're gonna go in with the scallion whites that we chopped before. Once those start to sweat a little bit and get fragrant, we're going to go in with a few tablespoons of this stuff. It's called Blanching, and it is basically fermented chili bean paste. It's kind of like the gochujang of Sichuan cooking. That's how I like to think about it. We're going to throw that in and fry it for a minute or so. And what this will do is start to cook out some of the oil that's in the paste, and that'll infuse with the oil that's in our pan, and you'll start to get a bit of a red color. Next, go in with about 60 mils of soy sauce. And I'm using about 750 milliliters, or 3/4 of a liter of water. And we're going to bring that up to a boil, and this will be the base of our broth. Next, for some greens, I've got some celery. I'm going to take a few stalks and chop them on a bias. Then I'm going to take the leaves and chop those up pretty roughly and dump those on in. Now I've got the only Napa that my grocery store had, this tiny little head. But it's alright, we don't need that much. I'm going to tear off some leaves. And then I'm going to hand tear the green portion just to get a nice texture. And I'll cut the whites into 1 centimeter strips. Dump those in as well. Mix them on into the water. And we're really just blanching these here. You don't want to take away too much of the crunch. So after a few minutes, pull them out and put them into your serving bowl. Next, we'll go in with the meat. Again, we're poaching until the meat is just done, so throw it in and pull it on out after a minute or so. It really doesn't take that long since we sliced it so thin. Cover it up with our broth. Add on our toppings. And then heat up some of that chili oil and drizzle it on top. This will let some of the fragrance come out of those scallions and the cilantro. So水煮肉片is kind of a quintessential málà flavor profile dish. Málà is basically the numbing, spicy balance in Sichuan cooking. The flavor that the broth gets from the pork, even though it's in there briefly, it really kind of jumps out. All the other little flavor components just layer on top of each other. That's something I love about Chinese cooking, is how layered it can be. And I've also had the version of this with fish in it, and it is equally good. So if you can't eat pork, then definitely go for that one. So I've got a link to the full recipe in the description below. And if you're into Southeast Asian cooking, then check out this video where I show you how to make Malaysian curry noodles. See you next time. Cheers.